What's up, everybody? We are live. Thank you for tuning in. I've got to get one of those fancy intros that people do, but hey, this was kind of unexpected. I didn't see the news last night about the trial being canceled for the day. I saw it this morning. So, and then I actually just saw that one of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporters says that they're not coming back until Monday now. There's not going to be any trial tomorrow. I think they usually have Fridays off, so that's standard. But yeah, no trial until Monday. I think they're still going to have a hearing on Friday over prosecutors' request to bar cameras from the courtroom, which I kind of don't think that's going to be granted. I think we're going to move forward with the same scenarios that we have right now, where if witnesses say they don't want their face shown, then the cameras aren't going to show it. But the idea of the judge actually approving no camera streaming at all, only audio, I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see. And just the fact that he isn't dealing with that immediately, it's, the hearing isn't scheduled until Friday, kind of shows it's maybe that not that big of a scenario. As to why the trial isn't happening today and why it's not happening tomorrow, I don't know. The judge hasn't publicly said anything, and any speculation about this, I would warn anyone not to get too excited about this has anything to do with the actual case. The judge is a person too, and he might have something going on in his life. Something might have happened in his family. Who knows? The idea, I saw somebody saying that, oh, this must mean that the defense is getting ready to ask for a mistrial. No, they wouldn't cancel court because of that. The defense can be preparing to ask for a mistrial at any time, and it wouldn't delay the proceedings. But I can say right now, I really don't think there's going to be a mistrial, maybe ever in this case, because the only person who can call a mistrial is the judge. And look what the judge is doing. It's been going on forever. It's crazy that they took so long to seat a jury, and then all these decisions that he's made, just kind of out there decisions, so on and so forth. The idea that he would ever just be like, oh yeah, I messed this case up enough that we need to start over. No. And what I think if there's anything going on with the case that's actually delaying trial, it's this issue that they're dealing with over whether to allow the jury to actually see the video of Tik pleading guilty, which, as somebody who worked in legal trade publications for a number of years and knows, what makes a good legal trade publication story, that's a good legal trade publication story, because that is very unusual. What's happening with them questioning Tik about his plea agreement, both sides, is not unusual at all. It frankly really has nothing to do with Tik. He's just a witness, and that's his plea deal. And that's something that you would see in any trial where he's supposedly the star government witness. So the defense, the way the defense tries to attack that when there's a plea deal, is to show that there were all these other reasons for him to plead guilty, that, he didn't necessarily plead guilty because he wanted to plead guilty. So a lot of Max Shard's questions, especially, and I think Keratin Matthews too, were really focusing on, I think Max got into, did Tik really even understand a plea agreement? There were questions about, asking questions of his attorney, everything, because the prosecutor in her direct exam of Tik, which is totally standard, would go over the plea agreement that he took and really emphasize that this was voluntary on his part. And that's what she was doing. So on cross-examination, the defense is trying to counter that. And we really saw that with Brian Steele at first, where he questioned Tik about, the conditions in the jail. He asked him about his 3 kids with 3 women, just to kind of show that there were all these other circumstances going on in Tik's life that would have influenced his decision to take a plea deal. So the other attorneys did some of that too in their questioning, Max Shard, Keratin Matthews. So none of that is unusual. What's unusual, at least from my scenario in California and talking to all the attorneys and court people I know out here, is the fact that there's actually a video of Tik's plea hearing. Because it's totally standard that you would maybe even get into the court documents of this plea agreement, that you would show the transcript, that you would go over, okay, you pleaded guilty on this day. But the fact that there's actually a video that you can pull up that shows the entire plea hearing, That just doesn't really exist in the cases out here. So when I'm asking about this scenario to people, I'm saying, because to me, it seems like just a landmine. And if I was a judge, don't even allow it. Because first of all, it's cumulative because the DA has already gone over this entire plea hearing. The jury already knows about this plea hearing. Tik has been questioned about it exhaustively. The idea that it's not just repetitive to get up there and show the jury the actual video of him pleading guilty. But then there's all these other scenarios of just the cameraman. It's like the cameraman is the one controlling where to focus the camera during the hearing, where to zoom, where to focus. And we've heard criticisms about that in other cases about, the camera focuses on the wrong thing. We're hearing that in the Idaho murder cases where some of the criticism of the camera in the courts is that they focus too much on the defendant. But that's just an example of by allowing the jury to like see a video of the plea hearing, you're kind of bringing the cameraman's decisions into it on what to focus on. Like it is just such a landmine of like weird situations that you wouldn't want to bring in. Like it's kind of clever that the prosecutor would want to bring it up just on her part. Like maybe it's like kind of good thinking to try to counter it, but it just seems like there's so many issues here with bringing someone else's plea deal into this and bringing another court hearing into the trial that it's not worth the possibility of this, like, screwing up the whole case on appeal. I'm not saying this is going to lead to a mistrial because it's not. This judge is not going to call a mistrial. Like it's kind of crazy how he really seems to have trial management problems and to struggle with any kind of legal issue that comes before him, and just in terms of making a decision. Because another issue that they're dealing with is these Instagram messages that Tik sent with Thug and some other YSL members about the web, where they're talking about financial where they're talking about financial. Sorry, I'm reading the connection here. I know, and I'm not talking. See, people always. I'm seeing Stephanie's comment about whether the video will hurt the state more. That's just a personal thing. This is completely unusual. First of all, it's totally rare that there even be video of a plea hearing. But everyone that I've talked to has never even heard of this being presented. So the idea that, it just depends on what exactly is in the plea deal. No, it's actually going to, no, that is not like the defense attorneys should actually be fighting against this a little bit more than they are. Like, it's kind of surprising that Brian Steele wasn't even speaking up against this when it was Max Shard doing it all. But the whole idea that, if I just review the plea deal video myself, I'll see that it's actually should be allowed. No, that's not like that's not the legal issue that they're dealing with here. The legal issue is just, frankly, the fact that this even exists. And maybe because they filmed so many cases in Georgia, they have had this before where they've actually taken video of the proceeding and played it before the jury. But what I was talking about with I'll go back to what I was talking about with the IG messages. Oh yeah, it was way after. This was from like 2021 or just in the last couple of years. There's one from February 2021. I've got the video up of it. But during this discussion where the prosecutor, it's outside the jury and they're talking to the judge about these Instagram messages that she wants to get in, that she's saying Brian Steele's cross of Tik opened the door on. The judge is like kind of trying to address it or something. But then all of a sudden he's like, so these are the messages that have been entered as exhibits, blah, blah, blah. It's like, wait, what? No, dude, these haven't been entered as evidence. Like he says things that reveal he has no idea what's going on. It's like, oh, wait a minute, dude. Like, no, the whole idea of the prosecutor, everything she just told you over the last 10 minutes about these Instagram messages, the reason she's telling you that is because they're not in evidence and she wants to get them entered in evidence. So for him to hear all that and then to respond to it and be like, okay, so these are the messages that are entered as exhibit. No, they're not entered as evidence. Like, it doesn't give you a lot of confidence that he's actually like understanding these issues and dealing with them, because I've got a video up on how he deals with that. Because he initially tells her no, that he's not going to allow him in. And then he gets into it with Bruce Harvey, because Bruce Harvey really stands up and says, because he didn't do any kind of examination on Tik at all. If these Instagram messages do come in, he doesn't want he wants there to be a jury instruction telling the jury that they can't consider it against Nichols. And these are the kind of questions I would love to ask these attorneys that I'm sure they would never say on the record. But I wonder what Harvey actually thinks of Steele, because Steele comes across really, really, really well. Like, he has a good form, and his cross of Tik was so good and everything. But when you actually look at the substance of his case, it's like it's kind of unbelievable, guys. I mean, does anyone really believe, all this stuff about, I mean, he did a good job of trying to separate Tik and Thug, but I mean, his whole scenario of, Thug didn't approve of any of this criminal behavior. Tik was this wayward friend that was kind of off doing his own thing, and Thug was trying to encourage him to not commit crimes. It's like, is that believable? I mean, that photo that Tik posted on Instagram that they brought up in Cross yesterday, I mean, kind of shows that there was some kind of friendly relationship between the two of them there. But it's still unclear to me whether these Instagram messages from the web are actually going to be allowed in, because the judge was like kind of all over the place in his decision, because he at first said no, and then she really went to bat, and she goes and she reads these messages aloud and says, makes the case. So he says, "Oh, okay, you've kind of shown that now, and I'm going to overrule the defense objection." But then he says, "Oh, but you haven't laid any foundation." So when Tik comes back on the stand, I think it's a big question of, is he actually going to be questioned about those messages? And part of it is you just can't really tell with the judge. But like Tik's testimony about, denying those are blood gang symbols, and the B stands for boo or boss. It's like, is that believable? And Brian Steele had a good, there's some other Instagram messages that he's brought up on his own. And there's like the 17-minute, I'll see if I can bring it up here on my own channel here, but he's got the 17-minute thing where he goes through the Instagram messages because it's an overt act, and he tries to show that they took it out of context. And that one, I think when you look at the messages, you can kind of see that, okay, yeah, maybe they did take that out of context, because they just took one line of Thug like threatening, or he has some kind of like message about like shooting somebody or something. But when you see it all taken in context, it's just a bunch of friends bantering about like little Uzi getting a diamond embedded in his head or something. But then there's this 5-minute one. It's YSL Overt Act 132. Let me share this scene here. And he does, I mean, Brian Steele, his style of questioning would really irk some judges and maybe not be allowed, because he testifies a lot through his questioning. And granted, it's cross, so he can ask leading questions, but this, and I'm not saying it's like a legitimate overt act to have on here, but Steele's whole defense on this with Tik, I mean, to me, it's like, it's kind of obvious that Tik has been coached on this, and Steele's given him some cues here on what to remember. Oh, wasn't this about women or something? It goes on for a little bit here, but
falsely told your girlfriend that you were cheating on her, something like that. Is that true?
I feel like that could have been what it was about.
Okay, well, let's go through it. The first one is on page 3242. That's just an attachment. You see that?
Yeah.
And you wrote, "Put my life on the line for the gang, but they left me out and dry like a wet."
Didn't he, I mean, he kind of read over that 4 there, but he kind of starts going through it, and you guys can watch the video yourself. I'll link to it here. And it's all about how, this was about them just getting mad at somebody for telling their girlfriends about what they were doing, and then Thug weighs in at the last minute and says something like, "You guys haven't even killed anyone yet or shot anyone yet." And the point is that Thug's kind of looking like a peacemaker here. And it's just up for interpretation. But I remember I posted this video on TikTok, and a lot of people just laughed, and somebody commented with all the laughing emojis and said in a just said there is absolutely no way they were arguing about women. And I think this is an example of when Steele stuff might just be like, it's like, okay, do people believe this? And the way he puts it up there and actually reads in front of the jury, Tik saying, "Put my life on the line for the gang," but he reads, he doesn't really read for out loud. Like some of that stuff in cross, I was like, is this actually gonna like help them very much? You know, I mean, I don't know, and I wonder because Bruce Harvey was like so pissed off when he was arguing about trying to get the other Instagram messages out, which I've got a video of that too. This is the other Instagram messages where they're all talking about the web and paying rent on the web, and his argument that Nichols shouldn't be included in that because Tik was never questioned about Nichols. And at first, the judge says, well, there's no scope of cross rule in Georgia state courts, meaning that someone's cross-examination isn't limited to what the prosecutor said in direct. So that would mean Harvey's argument about, well, my client was never mentioned in this, so he can't be brought in, wouldn't fly. But then the judge actually kind of contradicts himself and begins to think that maybe Harvey's right and starts to ask the prosecutor about, well, what do these mean about Mr. Nichols? What does that say? What does that say here about Mr. Nichols? So he's kind of going back and forth on that. But I wonder what Harvey thinks about Steele supposedly opening the door on that. Because what's interesting on the Instagram messages, and frankly, when I see the Instagram messages, or we haven't seen them yet, but we've heard the prosecutor read them out loud, kind of like, why wasn't this just part of the case to begin with? But it sounds like from what happened is the prosecutor wasn't going to use those until all the questions in cross to Tik about, implying that he only lives with his grandma and he hadn't had a friendship with Thug in a number of years. Because that's what I'm saying is like, do people really believe that? I mean, is that a believable thing for the jury and everything that they've heard and seen with Tik and Thug? But one big thing is, it's like, especially after all this, it's like, oh, so this trial must be almost over, right? I mean, we just had the main witness. I mean, it's crazy how mismanaged it is, because no, they're not even close to being over. In this, the latest witnesses that they've had, like the carjacking one, when you look at the indictment, it's like, why do they even have this in here? Because they could just strike the overt act, because it's for Christian Eppinger, who I guess was severed from the case like 6-7 months ago. He's not even part of the trial. So, and it's just an overt act, but they've got a witness to the carjacking. They have like the 911 dispatcher or somebody introduced the 911 call. And it was just like, this is just going to take forever. Like the way they go over every little single thing. There's so many waste of time questions where like, they're just asking the obvious, like, is the date on this February 4th, when the date is obviously February 4th? Like, it's the trials that I cover in California are at least more streamlined, where that's not allowed. But from what I've heard, this RICO case is like the biggest case that Fulton County's ever seen. So you can tell that they're taking the way they prosecute any case, thoroughly. They look at everything, don't cut corners, and putting it in here. And it's just way too big, because that's what's going to work to the defense advantage. Like any kind of delay like this always just works to the defense advantage. Anything to kind of, wear down the jury or cause confusion or anything. Because when you actually look at some of prosecutors' case, it's not like they just have no case whatsoever. It's just they've thrown it all in with all this stuff that they don't even need, and it's not going to be presented in any kind of like digestible way for the jury. And I mean, who knows? Gosh, it's January 24th, and they really have not gotten very far in the trial at all. It's crazy that Tik hasn't even finished testifying, and just all these breaks and delays that happen. But you can tell that the judge just like seriously has issues. And I go back to something, my favorite website is the Robing Room. It's like Yelp for judges, where attorneys review judges. And I was looking at just some random review of a judge in like Ohio who had a really bad review, some state court judge. And one of the comments was, the first warning sign about this judge is that there are many positive articles about him in the newspaper. Those articles never know what's going on. It's like, I hate to see that, but it's kind of true. And I mean, the fact that the judge has a therapy dog, it's like, okay, I mean, we kind of saw that in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about the judge and his, oh, this cute dog that he has and everything. And it's like, okay, what is going on with this trial where these guys are being held without bail? And that's the thing, because I can see, taking a long time to do a trial, and he's got other things to do, so he needs to take a week off. So it's like, you need to give these guys bail, I mean, who even knows why we don't even really have a trial right now? Because like I said, things happen, he's human. He might have some kind of issue in his family. It really might not have anything to do with the courts at all. But I just think it's an example of why they should have definitely considered some kind of bail situation for them. But somebody asked if I think Kevin asked if I think Tik is in trouble for not being truthful in his testimony. No, because I mean, what he's saying, like the way he's kind of going back and forth on stuff. I mean, all the B means boss and boo is kind of obvious bullshit. But the idea that he would ever like be prosecuted for perjury for that is no, because that's just like not provable. In the end, it's his own kind of, frankly, opinion about what it means. So in the way he's kind of going back and forth on stuff is kind of just like classic stuff you might see with any witness. So I definitely don't think he's in any trouble. And all the stuff about his plea deal, like them wanting to impeach him on his plea deal, it sounds like bad for him, but it really it's not anything against him personally. Like there's not any chance that his plea deal is going to get rescinded or something. Like the thing that would make that a possibility would be like, is if he just stopped showing up to the witness stand or something, if like he just skipped town and wasn't going to finish his testimony, then he would be pretty screwed because his plea deal requires him to testify. So let me see if I can get some more questions here. I got to get a moderator in here who can like highlight stuff for me. Yeah, and this is the main witness. It's really hard to say. So far, I'd say Tik has definitely been the main witness so far. And I think he's arguably, if one of the biggest witnesses of the case, if not the biggest, because he's the confessed co-leader with Thug. His plea deal says that he co-founded Young Slime Life, and his testimony supposedly is that the co-founder was Young Thug. So I think you could easily make the case that he is the biggest witness. But there are also other YSL members who've taken plea deals who are supposed to testify. And when you just look at the plea deals, it could be pretty big. Like the Lil Wayne bus shooting stuff, I think we could hear some testimony about that, but it's just hard to say. And that's why like they have so many big issues, like the Lil Wayne bus shooting, the Donovan Thomas murder, that I mean, I don't know why they're so focused on like some carjacking from like 8 years ago that involved supposedly a YSL member who's actually not even part of the trial. Like, I don't understand why they couldn't have just cut that from the case cut that from the trial after Christian Eppinger was severed. But maybe they have some kind of legal reason for it. It just seems like it's like such a cluster of a case, but there could be, Antonio Sumlin has been mentioned a lot in this. And I thought when I Googled it, it looked like he had taken a plea deal. And there are a lot of people who are going to testify who could end up being pretty big. But I think just on paper and in terms of implications for Young Thug, I think Tik is kind of it. But Uptown Marty, thank you for saying hi. Yeah, this is and this is the criminal justice on full display. It is, keep in mind, this is freaking Georgia. It's a red state. And granted, I think Fonnie Willis and the DA's office is ran by Democrats and Atlanta's ran by Democrats, but it's a red state in the South. So trials are run a little bit differently in California. But I was just thinking about, because one thing, I mean, I think the news reports have been pretty open about the fact that this is like the biggest case that Fulton County's ever had. And some people say that they're doing this RICO case as like a test for their Trump RICO case. It's like, you'd think the prosecutor's office would, recognize the fact that this is a really huge case and maybe like go to some other prosecutor's offices in the country to like get advice on how to do RICO cases. But, go tell a bunch of people in Georgia that they should go get advice from people in California about how to do things. It's just not happening. But is it true that some lady from the neighborhood said crime has gone down since these guys have been locked up? That might be the witness that to the carjacking that I watched, and I've got her testimony up there, and I don't think she quite said that. And if that question was asked, like there would be an objection, and her answer would be stricken, because it would just be speculation. Because I think the question was, had anything like that ever happened in the neighborhood before? And she said no pretty immediately. But then there was an objection, because it's not like she actually knows and can speak for the entire neighborhood. So, but having people like her, I think it does help prosecutors, because it's just a reminder. It's like, yeah, there were people in the actual neighborhood who were victimized and called 911 and felt scared of these people. But I think the big problem with that one is, it's like the guy that they think did that, Christian Eppinger, isn't on trial. So it just seems like there's so much stuff in the case that they could have cut out, and they're not even through that overt act. They had the eyewitness testify, they had the 911 dispatcher testify, played the 911 call, and I don't think the dispatcher's even off the stand. I'm not sure. But then they're going to have the actual victim of the carjacking testify later. And it's like all for one overt act. And there are 191 overt acts in the case, but why was court canceled? We don't know for sure. The judge canceled it last night, and then today he announced it was canceled through Monday. So somebody said something about the judge said, "Oh, there's an emergency," and I said, I wouldn't get too excited about it having anything to do with the actual case. Like, the judge might have something going on in his life. Something might have happened in his family or something like that. Like last night or this morning when I heard it was canceled, I was wondering if it had something to do with him trying to grapple with the legal issues surrounding the video of Tik's plea deal being actually played in court. But I don't know. I there could just be something going on. It's like, I don't know. He probably has kids. Maybe something happened with his kids or something. But it's always just like such speculation, to try to. I always wish they would tell us, because probably what's going to happen is court's going to come back on Monday, and we're not really going to find out why this trial didn't happen, or why the trial didn't happen this week. But gosh, after having all that time off last week, and then it seems like the whole trial, like the last couple of days, was derailed by all these side conversations and things like that. So we're just not getting a lot of testimony time. But I was kind of glad for all the downtime, because I found a lot of I really like doing the clips. I think it's a great way to cover the trial, because especially with having the whole trial streamed, I'm like, man, everything is just right there. It's right. It's kind of a dream come true for trial coverage. It's just a matter of like making it accessible to people and trying to give it. Yeah. Somebody says they think the jury will be confused. Bringing up another witness to testify while Tik was in the middle of his testimony would have confused me. Yeah. And it's like, why can't we just get Tik on and off the stand? You got to feel for him. But gosh, what I'm going to make a video later of this whole Tik's video plea deal, like the debate over what was going on with that. But because they realize part of the video includes Tik getting off the stand to talk to his attorney, and you can actually hear the conversation that they're having on the video. So they were like, "Oh, can we get Tik to just waive his attorney-client privilege so we can play this in front of the jury?" It's like, what the hell? Why don't you guys just edit that out? And from Tik's standpoint, I mean, he doesn't really know, if his lawyer is telling him privately, "Oh yeah, just waive your attorney-client privilege, it's fine." I mean, that's why he has a lawyer, is to advise him on stuff like that. But when I see that, I'm like, dude, he is not getting well served by any of this advice. Why should he waive his attorney-client privilege to that? It reminds me of the Tory Lanez case, when he was arguing. He had those lawyers, Matthew Barhoma, who was just charging him tons of money. Guy has no experience whatsoever, but he filed some harebrained motion for new trial and was losing an argument in court. It was so obvious that the judge wasn't going to rule against him, but he wanted to talk about some emails in front of the entire courtroom. So he just went over and whispered in Tory Lanez's ear and told him to waive attorney-client privilege with Sean Hawley. And Tory just did it right there. So Barhoma was able to bring up all these emails and start talking about them. And of course, he lost his motion for new trial. And by him having Lanez waive his attorney-client privilege over that, it made those emails public. And it was the email that Sean Hawley sent Lanez that said she didn't think blaming Kelsey for the shooting was a viable strategy, and that if he wanted to do that, he needed to get another lawyer. It's like, okay, it was not in Tory Lanez's benefit at all for these emails to become public. And his lawyer who persuaded him to do that did that on like a whim, just because he was like trying to bolster his own ego while doing some argument in front of the judge. It was like, this is some really, really bad lawyering. And it's not quite as bad as the Lanez thing, but that's kind of what was going on with Tik yesterday, when Tik has this lawyer, Christy Gladden, who part of the point of Brian Steele's cross-examination of Thug was that he was not well served by his lawyer, that he got a lawyer in there at the last minute who had him take a plea deal and, didn't really know what she was doing and didn't serve him well. And then that same lawyer who's there in court yesterday is telling him, oh yeah, waive your attorney-client privilege over this sidebar that we had during your plea hearing. Because I can kind of see why they would want to do that, because it doesn't actually harm Tik to have that out there, but it's also just like, why should he waive his privilege over that? Like, to do the prosecutors a favor, basically. Like, the prosecutors want to play that video of his plea deal to try to impeach him and show that, he knew what he was doing. It's like, why do them any favors at all? But his lawyer's just like, oh yeah, he'll waive privilege. But then, and I'm going to make the clips up this afternoon, the judge says something to her and she's like, oh wait, I'm confused. I didn't know what the situation was. And the judge gets a little worried there, because he even said something earlier. He's like, this is a really big situation. He's like, if we get something wrong here, it's really bad. And he means in terms of an appeal. Like, if any of these guys get convicted in this trial and it turns out that they allowed a bunch of stuff in about Tik's plea deal that shouldn't have been in or something, like, the convictions could totally be thrown out. That's what the judge was alluding to there. So just given that whole scenario, which is something I want to write an article about, this morning I was kind of wondering if the judge was having like second thoughts about, allowing this video to be played, because my understanding was that that's what was going to happen. Tik was going to be back on the stand this morning, and the judge or the prosecutor is going to be able to ask him about the video of the plea deal. But they probably had different scenario, different plans there. Yeah, and he seems to have and maybe this just goes to why he has a therapy dog in court with him, but he takes stuff way too personally, the way he just like goes and snaps at people. But and like I said, we're all human. Like, I take things personally sometimes and snap at people, but it's just a big stage for him to be on. But in terms of why the case is not happening, like the idea that he would want to grapple with that issue so much that like he needs to cancel court for the day, probably not. Like, I saw somebody say something about, oh, the judge said he had an emergency, and that might really just be true. He might have something going on in his family. His wife's family member died or something like that. Who knows? It's just it's hard to speculate. But one thing, I just think if the defense brings another mistrial motion over whatever, which they could do, because if anything, you don't bring those because you think the judge is going to grant them. You do them to preserve the record, because sometimes on appeal, we saw this in Tory Lanez's motion for new trial, the judge would be like, well, you can't bring that up now because you never complained about it during the trial. So that's why that's why things like that. Thugger Daily, what's up, Thugger Daily? I see you on Twitter. I appreciate this guy. I was going through some clips on TikTok and I couldn't ID one of the one of the guys. And with the TikTok stuff, the captions are important. And one big thing about the captions is I want them to be right. Like when they're reading a name, I don't want to just go with whatever the caption auto-generated because it's probably wrong. But they read a name and I didn't know the name. So I just took a quick video and sent a DM to Thugger Daily and was like, hey, do you know what name they're saying here? And within like 5 seconds, he responded back and had the name. It was awesome. But yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, not that Glanville will call it cause of mistrial, but somewhere along the line, like people are saying that the appeals court will call one, and it might just be like a different way of talking. Like people in California courts, it's like a mistrial is only something that the judge would call, but maybe in, the South courts, they talk about it a little bit differently. And yeah, Rachel calls it. I had to laugh at when the guy interrupted the Zoom bomber who somehow figured out how to like unmute himself, or he got the Zoom code from somebody and yelled that free thug mistrial, because the whole point of being able to like do that is like maybe the jury will hear you. You can send a message to the jury, and it's like the jury can't cause a mistrial. He needed to be like free thug, not guilty, but he yelled free thug mistrial. And it's like, mistrial just means they're going to do this all over again. And that's the thing. This just seems like such a political case. Like if there is a mistrial, like if for some crazy reason, like some jurors just disappeared or whatever, like couldn't do the trial anymore and they had to start over, like they would just start over, the idea that that the case would just disappear. But it's kind of scary, that they're just allowed. I think especially the big thing that bothers me about the case is that it's like a test case. It's so political. It's so mismanaged, and they're all being held in jail without bail. And it's like, that just seems like really, really inherently unfair. Like, I mean, to say that like, you just shouldn't bring a case because you've never done it before, that maybe that's not a good argument. But to say that like you should just like let some guys be in jail without bail while you're like basically taking a case as a test is, I don't know, it just seems totally unfair. But oh, Antonio, thank you, Antonio. I need to get a moderator in here. It's hard for me to like read the stuff and then like stay up with you guys. But I think the defendant's argument for bond gets greatly bolstered in the event of a mistrial, especially with how many dangerous people they gave no jail time and just probation. Yeah, see, that's the thing. I'm like, when these plea deals started, like, did anyone get significant jail time? Because I admittedly was not paying attention to this case much before the trial actually started. Like, I do want to go back and watch Trontavious's plea hearing, like just for my own edification now. But all the people who took plea deals, I mean, especially if Tik was allowed to get out of jail on 8 years probation, I mean, nobody else got serious jail time yet who's pleaded guilty, right? And that's the thing that kind of casts doubt on whether this is like a big serious case and these guys are so dangerous. But then, I mean, you do realize, because so much of the case is old, that I think a lot of people are like, oh, all this stuff is stuff that happened like 7 years ago. It's like, oh no, one of the murders was from like just 2021 or 2022, right? And there is some stuff that's kind of new, but like we haven't even heard about that. You'd think they'd cut out some of this old stuff and just focus on the new stuff. But it's just weird. It's like this weird kind of Twilight Zone, and you wonder if something's going to happen, like with the judge, if he's just going to lose it in the middle of the court or something. And somebody wants to know how much the jurors are paid. I don't think much. I don't know what the actual rate is for like Fulton County Superior Court jury service, but most places it's like $15 to $30 a day, like if that, and that's the thing that bothers me is first of all, I just don't understand how anyone could just take all these days off work like that. But then what would be so frustrating what if some of these people have jobs that they're trying to work, And, last week they were like, okay, I can work because the trial's not in, but they're like, I absolutely can't work next week because the trial's coming back. And now all of a sudden they can work, but what if the schedule's already made or something, So Thugger Daily, he says they're paid $15 a day. Gosh, that's like nothing. The one defendant who was granted bond has a murder charge. I wonder why he was granted bond. I'd like to go back and look at his video. His video plea. That's one thing I want to do, though, is put together a story on this whole concept of like actually having a video of a proceeding like shown to the jury, because if it seems like that would start a precedent. I mean, if the judge does allow the jury to see the plea deal, like what's to stop the attorneys when they do their closing argument and they want to take some quotes from prior witness testimony, which is totally common. They would like get a PowerPoint scenario, and they go over, here are some reminders of what Tik said in his testimony. What would stop them from asking, like showing, not just showing the quote from the court reporter's transcript, but going back and getting the clip of Tik actually saying that? Because one kind of win scenario, I think, for the prosecutor in her redirect of Tik was when she got him to say that he was selling drugs for the benefit of YSL, that none of the members of YSL told him to sell drugs, but he was doing it to like further the notoriety of the gang. And then a little bit later, he kind of follows up with Max Shard, or actually, no, it wasn't the prosecutor in redirect. It was Max Shard in his own cross. And Max Shard follows up a little bit later and says, oh, the notoriety of you. And Tik's like, yeah, I thought that's what you mean. But earlier, Tik was pretty adamantly just like, yeah, I was selling drugs to help YSL. And it's like, okay, you're not supposed to like actually say that, like kind of thing. And the prosecutor is probably going to cite that. And she did cite it in outside the jury in her own argument to the judge about these Instagram messages about the web that she's trying to get in. She's like, the defendant, or she's like, the witness admitted in direct and exam that he committed crimes to improve the notoriety, to further the notoriety and status of YSL. She goes, he said that in both direct and cross. And she's talking about that moment in Max Shard's cross-examination of Tik where he said that. So if for some reason the judge does allow this video of Tik's plea deal to play, which I kind of think that they really should just back off on that whole thing. What's to stop the prosecutor from, in her closing argument, not only wanting to quote Tik saying that, but to actually show the video clip of him saying that? Like, and that is just like uncharted ground. Like at least over here on the West Coast in the cases that I'm used to, because I talked to like a court clerk that I always ask stuff about, and she worked in courts forever. And she said she's never seen that. But of course, she also cautions that she worked in federal court where they don't have video of anything. And then when she was in state court, they just didn't have videos to play. So it's just not an issue that happens. I'd like to hear if it's ever come up before. If Thug is acquitted, do you think the feds take him into custody for the Glock switches and illegal guns he had in his house? Hard to say. Probably not. Although they could, but I kind of, yeah, I don't know if they have some kind of like gentleman's agreement with the DA's office to just not go after those charges right now, because usually even for the state RICO stuff, the feds would consider themselves more important than the state. And if they really wanted to go after Thug, like they wouldn't wait for the state on anything. They would just go after him now and not worry about it, especially with how bad this case seems or something. So it seems like if they wanted to go after him or bring an indictment against him, they would have already done it. But thank you guys for tuning in so much. I want to do this again and keep making clips too. That's kind of the fun thing. Can Judge Glanville's time management issues help the defense when it comes to an appeal? I don't think it'll really help on an appeal because judges have so much discretion with things like that. He can, make decisions like that. Although it might be an issue the way Tik's like cross-examination or the way his testimony is spread out. Like if they have other fundamental legal issues that they're arguing about, bad things that they think happened in the cross, like making the argument that this happened over the course of like 6 weeks with all these breaks in between isn't gonna like make the judge look very good. So it could help them a little bit, but I don't think they really have a reversible issue just based on like scheduling stuff, because judges have so much discretion on that. Didn't they go into Thug's house without a warrant? You know, I don't know that. I'd have to look up. There's so much to catch up on with the case. One thing I've definitely learned a lot from doing all these clips. And if you guys haven't checked them out, I've got them here on the YouTube channel, but I also do them on TikTok. And I think that's cool because I do the captions too, which are, I do the auto generate, but then I go through and fix them. But I think the captions really get a lot of people in. And it's a ton of, it's a big crowd. It's bigger than my YouTube crowd. And I definitely want to do a live on there soon to take some questions. But I really like learned a ton about the case by immersing myself in all those clips and have gotten really into it. So I'm excited to keep doing it moving forward. But I've realized that there's so much that happened over the last year that I wasn't even really paying attention to. So, but it'd be fun to go back and watch these, because if they did go into Thug's house without a warrant, there must have been like motions about that and that kind of thing. Whoops. Prisoner died. Yeah, that's the thing. Fulton County Jail sounds like a quite a hellhole for sure. Bedbug infestation, like, ugh. And that's, I think, Brian Steele's clips and the way he talked with Tik was like so quotable. It like really helped with, especially for TikTok, kind of the small videos that draw people in. But I'm just wondering, you know, how believable his overall scenario is of, you know, Thug and Tik weren't really friends at all anymore, and Thug was having like a tough love relationship with Tik and didn't approve of like his gang banging, because I think it came across really well and Tik definitely like gave him what he needed during the cross. But then there's just like other stuff, like these Instagram messages that are all pretty new that show they were all arguing. And one that gets read yesterday, we didn't actually see it on the screen, but the prosecutor read it aloud. She said Tik is talking to the other YSL members and he says, find your purpose for the gang. It's like, that's kind of funny. Tik had a real leadership role in that whole thing. But fans know that Steele was actually telling the truth when he was talking about Slug and Thug going separate ways for some years. Yeah, I mean, he did a good job. He did a good job of like separating them just in terms of like sophistication. Like, you know, Thug is like so busy and he's got this sophisticated lifestyle, and Tik is, you know, still like stealing from people and getting kicked off tour and stuff like that. But then it's like these Instagram messages that show them talking and conversing, and like this photo, which by the way, I don't know if you guys saw the clip of it's basically like really the only thing that happened, not yesterday, but was it yesterday? Or Monday, the clip of Tik with in front of the car, and he says busted down Rolly came from Thug, but he's also wearing a Rolex watch. Because is he talking about Rolly? Is he talking about Rolls Royce? Or is he talking about the watch? Because I thought it was the Rolls Royce. It seems like the kind of thing that he would get from more likely that he would get from Thug, because he says in that clip that the Rolex watch he has is like $4,000 or $5,000, but that SUV. So I guess it's a question to me of what Rolly is he referring to? Is he referring to the watch? Do you guys know? Or somebody asks if where was defense going highlighting Thug's attire? They're trying to show that he was friends with you said Thug, not Tik. Thug's attire by it's really more them trying to counter the idea that that he was just this Bloods gang member who only wore red. Like it seemed like Steele always liked to put up photos of Thug wearing blue. But of course, the prosecutor's counter to that is she just brings up the fact that Gunner is a Crip and there are other members of YSL or Crips to kind of show that she wasn't talking about just that. Oh, okay. So people say it's the watch, not the car. Interesting. Interesting. I would have had to I'll have to go back and correct the caption on the YouTube video. Yeah, normally that would be the watch. Interesting. Yeah, so it was all like the clothes was all about the blue, but I think it was also just to kind of show how sophisticated Thug was. You know, to show the magazine covers and that not only was he like a rapper, he was like this fashion icon. Oh yeah, this is the one. No, they're just they're not going to take his plea deal away. Like really the only way that he could like jeopardize his plea deal is if he just stopped showing up to court. Like it's kind of weird to say, but I mean all this stuff where he says that you know the B stands for boo and boss, and it's like kind of obviously bullshit. It's not really going to actually get him in trouble because I mean, it's really actually just his personal interpretation of what it means. But the big thing is like any witness who takes a plea deal, it's like very common that the defense, of course, needs to like show that the plea deal might have problems with it. Like I covered an insider trading case where a baseball player was accused of doing illegal buying stock on the stock market based off of information that he heard from the CEO of a company. Like the CEO of a company was involved in this sale, and his best friend was this Major League Baseball player that he was always broing out with at like hockey games and stuff. And the baseball player heard about the company being sold, so bought all this stock, and they ended up getting charged in federal court with insider trading. So the first trial was he actually got convicted and then ended up taking a deal to testify against the CEO in the second trial. So the CEO's lawyers' jobs in the second trial were to cast doubt on his arrangement, this witnesses, the co-defendant turned witnesses arrangement with prosecutors. So to try to show that he, you know, had all these different reasons for testifying against him to try to get him a better prison deal. So that's kind of what's going on with Tik and his plea deal. It's like classic where anytime you have like a government witness who has a plea deal, like the defense is going to try to question that plea deal. So that's what's happening here, which is like completely common. But what's not common is to actually have a video of the hearing where the guy pleads guilty and have them want to talk about and have them want to show it for the jury. So that's what's happening now. And my understanding was yesterday the judge had decided that this stuff would be allowed in. They just want to not have the law and crime insignia on the video, and then also cut out certain things, like only certain parts are going to be shown. But I don't know, that's just like rife with so many issues, and I think he had other things to think about that that maybe he'll go back and forth on that. And for prosecutors, I just don't think it's really worth it. I don't really see how they need that. Okay, so the watch, not only is it the watch, but the little baby verse gives it away. Okay. Interesting. You learn something new every day. This is my problem with my actual lack of real life experience with this. But yeah, the judge is stressed. It's a lot going on in the courtroom. And then also, you know, it's kind of how it is for any trial, because, you know, you want to do it preparation, but a lot of this stuff is last minute because prosecutors weren't originally planning on bringing in the video of Tik's plea deal. Like, it's not like if before trial they could have sorted this out, because prosecutors didn't think it was anything they needed, but it was something the prosecutors thought of as the defense was asking questions to him about his plea deal. So, but it's a reason that some of the judges, especially in California that I cover, will make attorneys work. They'll have the trial be 5 days a week. And then especially this one federal judge who actually did a RICO case that I covered involving the Mongols motorcycle gang will make attorneys stay until like 1 a.m. Like all this stuff that they talk about in the middle of the day, he would have them do the night before. Like after the jury is gone, after court ends for the day, he's like, okay, what's coming tomorrow? Like, I want to see all your exhibits. And his rule is that anything that's going before the jury, he wants to see ahead of time. So he avoids any problems like this, but he would want to talk to the attorneys about the exams for the next day and what are all the exhibits to avoid stuff like this happening and like derailing the trial. And it sucks for the attorneys because they have to stay there super late, but it means that the next day everything runs smoothly. And this doesn't happen. So it's just kind of like it's just the judge and like the way he handles things. Like I said, it's not completely his fault because this stuff is kind of the nature of trials that it comes up at the last minute, but he seems to, can the judge be thrown off the case for his attitude? No, he can't. Well, I mean, yeah, and actually he's the chief judge is what I noticed in Fulton County. So he's like the one in charge and stuff. So yeah, there's not really much he can do. He does seem to be getting a little sensitive though. And he has to be just with all the attention that's on this, because I noticed yesterday or maybe 2 days ago when he started yelling at all the attorneys, he was like talking about, people get the idea that we don't know what's going on. It's like, yeah, only, half the internet and all of the chat rooms on the places that are streaming this, no, I haven't. I haven't seen a case with this many delays and days off. I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of crazy how they have to keep this, how they have to keep this going. It was already such a big case. It's not, I don't think it's normal, although it just, judges are so like different. Like it just depends on the judge. So some judges act like this, others are just like kind of different. Michelle, and a lot of that stuff is just, a lot of these cases, like, it's just like, to me, they're just like crime cases, like until that actually goes to court, and it's probably a superior court case, like a superior court murder case. It's not really like a legally interesting case. What's considered a speedy trial? What's considered a speedy trial? I guess it's like, what is it, 90 days or something? It depends on the state statute, but all of them waive it. So if they can, but I think these guys are exercising their speedy trial rights, which I can see a lot of defense attorneys, like they don't want to do that because they don't want to go to trial that fast because they need to prepare. But I'm sure one thing like Brian Steele and Bruce Harvey and the defense attorneys know is to their advantage is they know how mismanaged this case is and how prosecutors aren't ready for this at all. So it is much to their advantage to force prosecutors to go to trial fast. So how will Brian Steele attack the retired super cop gang expert who was very detailed about YSL IF gang feud? I don't know. There's so much old testimony I could go back over. I'm not really interested in like clipping it out for YouTube, but the Tik Tok crowd, I think especially would want to see him. So I might go over some of it yesterday and or during the break and post some of it on TikTok or something. I think it's a little late for anything to get thrown out now, because once it comes in through testimony, and if the judge hasn't stricken it, there's no way for like any Luchi testimony from like previous days to be stricken now. But one thing I thought was interesting was the clip of Luchi's lawyer yesterday, like guaranteeing that he's not going to testify, and there's just absolutely no way. It's like, okay. Somebody says even yesterday, Mr. Steele mentioned that the judge had an order in about the evidence and the prosecution was violating it. Seems like the prosecution is just doing what they want to do. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of like consequences for the prosecution too. There hasn't been any kind of like elimination of evidence or um somebody says, I'm just joined. If you already answered this, but the February hearing with media about, I don't know. I heard that I heard last I heard is they were doing a hearing on Friday about the prosecutor's motion to eliminate video stream, and I hadn't heard anything about that. But that's all I know. Well, yeah. Well, anyway, I'm excited to keep covering it, and hopefully they don't pull the plug on the video. But just it seems like from all the cases that they stream in Georgia, I mean, I think there's pretty good case law to establish that they get it, and especially the prosecutor's motion to pull the cameras, it just cites a bunch of stuff that already happened that they've already dealt with, and it's like, oh, we got a bunch of hateful messages online. Somebody sent us some mean emojis. It's like, okay, I don't think that's actually like a good way to do it. Yeah, a good place as it stands. I mean, yeah, I mean, everybody wants to know, it's like, is this good or bad for Young Thug? And it seems like overall he's in a good situation, because like I said, I mean, some of it with Brian Steele, like, it just seems like, is this a little over the top? And I said, like, are people actually going to believe this whole, like, are they separated kind of thing? And it seems like people are saying, like, well, yeah, it was believable. And that right now Brian Steele kind of has the upper hand in his cross, and just the way and method of him kind of eliciting this information from Tik, because the way Love responded to it in redirect was to go and just kind of act like there wasn't even anything to respond to. Yeah, and that might not have really been the best approach. So, but it's just hard to know because it's such a big, long case. And the thing that's scary is the judge is not going to call a mistrial. So if this ever does eventually go to the jury, there's so many charges that, I mean, chances are he's going to get convicted of something. It just be like, is he going to get convicted of RICO? That's kind of the big thing. Oh, and somebody asked regarding the cameras in court. It says, can they just turn off the comments? And of course, the problem is that there's so many different people streaming it that you can't control all these different media organizations. And I mean, maybe if there was a court order, you theoretically could, but the idea that you're going to be able to hold like some streamer in California accountable for a violation like that, that just opens up this whole another scenario of, I mean, the court already has enough to deal with. Are they going to deal with that too? But I think the way that they're doing it now, though, is fine, and nobody's really seemed to object to it. The cameraman is like, when witnesses testify, like the witnesses yesterday about the carjacking weren't on camera, and and so far the media has been adhering to that. The people who are working the cameras, like if somebody doesn't want their picture shown, they just don't show the picture. So it seems like they could just keep doing this. Somebody said all they need is one juror to convince. Yeah, exactly. It's just one, because they're going to be 12 jurors that deliberate, but they have to be unanimous. So kind of the old saying with defense attorneys is, oh, it only takes one. But it's true. I mean, hopefully you convince all 12 to acquit on all charges. But in the end, all you really need is just to convince one person not to convict. And then you can have a mistrial. And that's better than nothing, much better than an acquittal. Yeah, I was kind of wondering that too, is that they want the public they want the cameras out of court, so people can't see them fumbling the case. And one thing I'm wondering is, just, you have to wonder with all the politics in that office, is one witness that I went back and watched his testimony was Belknap, the gang detective that testified first of all. And you always got to remind yourself that it's very likely that the detectives think the prosecutors are morons, even though they're technically on the same side. just the way she was asking him questions and some of his responses, I'm like, I bet these gang detectives are just rolling their eyes at like how poorly managed this case is too, you know? Like, I don't know, you can kind of hints the dynamic on that. But God, if Trump becomes president again, he will pardon young things. If that's even true, but there's so many problems with Trump and everything, with what he did at the Capitol and just everything. I mean, the idea that anyone could vote for him, you know. But yeah, we'll be able to hear what's going on live. Oh yeah, and that's a good thing to remember. I should have said that. Yeah, Trump can't pardon Thug because it's state charges. The president can only pardon him if it's federal charges. So yeah, no, Thugger would be absolutely screwed. So do not vote for Donald Trump, whatever you do, but don't vote for him thinking that he's going to pardon Young Thug, because he can't. And if anyone says that he can, they're totally wrong, because it's state charges. Like if Thug was being indicted and being prosecuted in federal court and he was convicted, he definitely could. Like Kodak Black is a good example of that, which is actually a story that I should start covering a little bit more, how he got arrested on that probation violation. But like how Kodak Black and wasn't Lil Wayne, Kodak Black and Lil Wayne, they were both pardoned. Kodak Black definitely was pardoned by Lil Wayne a couple of years ago, but that was because it was a federal case, so there was jurisdiction over that. Oh, I didn't know that in Georgia, even the governor can't pardon somebody. So Georgia, man, they're tough. Do it tough out there. Somebody asked if we're going to be able to hear what's going on live. I'm not sure. I think the Friday hearing will be live, or if they do restrict cameras, we'll be able to hear audio. I think. I don't know anything about all the drama with that, fortunately. I think it says something that the feds didn't take this case, because they normally would do RICO cases, and like they haven't been, looking at all this stuff. And I don't know. I think it says something about, the politicalness of the case and the political nature of it. I have heard of RICO cases, or just organized crime. I mean, RICO is kind of the catchphrase, but just organized crime. Like there's a racketeering statute in Washington State that actually, before I covered a racketeering case in federal court, I covered a racketeering charge brought against some guy who had it was a theft ring. It was like a property theft ring in Spokane County. And he was prosecuted under the state RICO charge. But so I mean, it's not completely uncommon, but I was surprised at how common it is in Georgia. Apparently, Georgia has like brought RICO against like court reporters. I saw that some actual official court reporters, like the transcriptionists, were charged with RICO for some kind of plot that they had to like make their transcripts longer so they could charge more or things like that. So. Is this a speedy trial? Well, I mean, technically under the statute, they've waived it, but anyway. Thank you guys so much. I'm gonna keep the RICO statute against school teachers, and Rodalius Ryan's attorney brought that up during her rogue opening statement, and she got cut off a little bit, but she brought up all the times that they're trying to talk about the other RICO cases. So I mean, I definitely don't think it's definitely not unheard of to have states prosecute organized crime locally, but this is just an unusual case for how high profile it is in terms of Young Thug's really famous, and then it being streamed all online. Like that's kind of unusual. What do you think about Tik? I love Tik. I hope it works out for Tik. Like I don't know. I just feel like he's appears clean. I mean, he's on probation for 8 years, which they're probably checking up all the time. He's probably prohibited from talking to any of his old friends because he can't associated with gang members and stuff. And then all the stuff you hear about his job and how he's just got his commercial driver's license, and this was going to be his week to look for work, but he has to testify and stuff. It's like, how fucking shitty, Hope it works out for him. But everybody thinks he's hilarious, especially on TikTok. He's totally taken off. I published that the clip of him being asked what snitching is. It's like just a 3-minute clip. It got like 7.6 million views. But somebody asked if Tik lied on the stand. I mean, that's kind of up to interpretation, because I think the stuff in the reason some of those clips, like him talking about how the B tattoo he has means boo or boss, I think most people know that's obvious, like BS. But the idea that he would ever be like prosecuted for perjury or something, it's like no way. Because in the end, it's kind of just up to his interpretation on what it means. But a lot of times you'll see witnesses kind of BS on the stand, and it takes a lot to like actually bring a perjury case. So I definitely don't think he's looking at anything like that. But yeah, there's so much more to go in the case. It's crazy to think about. I'm like, are they even going to be done in a year if they're still on like one overt act, and it takes them like 2 witnesses over like the period of 3 days to like, and they're still not even through one overt act. But do you think that he fully understood that he was agreeing to yesterday in court after he talked to his lawyer? No, and that's what I'm gonna do when I get done here, is clip that stuff down, the discussion about him waiving attorney-client privilege and stuff, because not at all. And the way his attorney was just like, oh yeah, he's gonna do it, Your Honor. It's like, okay, so why did you tell him to waive attorney-client privilege? Because a lot of the stuff that you see in trials, like when I covered Michael Avenatti, that fraudulent lawyer who represented the porn star when she sued Stormy Daniels, and he got in all that trouble for ripping off his clients, and he represented himself and client in trial, and he was just the worst opposing counsel, because there's basic stuff that the defense and the prosecutors are supposed to agree upon just to like be professional and make the trial easier. Like they stipulate to things like if a recording is in Spanish and the prosecutors want to translate it to English for the jury, they'll ask the defense to stipulate to the fact that this is an authentic translation of that. And I think a lot of the times the instinct from the actual defendant is like, don't agree to do anything like that. Like, why give them any kind of favors or do anything like that? But it's like, when you're professional and in a professional setting, there's certain things that you would stipulate to. But in this situation, I just don't see, it's like, why should Tik waive his attorney-client privilege? And I think it's overall kind of innocuous, because he's already pleaded guilty. The idea that his plea agreement is ever going to be rescinded, like I said, I think the only way that actually becomes possible is if he just stops showing up to court. Whatever happens in his witness testimony, they're not actually going to take his plea deal back. But during this hearing, the actual law and crime video that they want to show the jury, Tik has a moment where he talks to his attorney that you can actually hear the conversation on the video. So because they're doing this on the fly and the prosecutors, want to get this done with, instead of just taking it out, editing it out, they want to just show that to the jury anyway. But in order to do that, they needed Tik to waive his attorney-client privilege. So maybe it's not that big, but that is one thing where I'm just like, dude, don't have him waive attorney-client privilege to anything. Like, this isn't just, is this a correct translation of a phone call stipulation kind of thing? Like, why should you agree to make it easier for the prosecutors to try to impeach you and put your friends in jail? Like, and the way the attorney was, and the judge was getting a little nervous too, because he had Tik talk to the attorney, and this is the same attorney that Brian Steele was like basically making it out to the jury that she's just kind of a moron and got Tik into this plea agreement that he shouldn't have taken. She's the one that's in charge of like advising Tik on whether to waive his attorney-client privilege. It's like, oh God, this guy is not getting good advice at all. And she comes in to talk to the judge, and the judge is like, did you talk to your client? And she said, oh yeah, it's fine. But then I got to pull up the clip, and she's like, oh wait, I'm confused. And then the judge gets a little nervous because he knows what a big issue this is, and he's like, but just like that right there, I'm like, okay, Tik should not be waiving his attorney-client privilege over anything. Like, So I got to see where they last stood on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if when Tik is back on the stand, that just goes away. Because I mean, I can kind of see prosecutors' point for wanting to bring up the video, but I don't think it, like some people were saying that maybe the video doesn't even actually help them. And it's just repetitive and cumulative. And traditionally, like what they've already done with the plea agreement is how it does. They go over the plea agreement and said, you did this all voluntarily. You answered all these questions. The whole idea that you would actually get to show the video of him doing it in court, there's all these issues with that. Like just down to like, why did the cameraman focus on what he did kind of thing. But anyway, I wanted to write a story on it. I was talking to some attorneys who said they've never seen it before, but part of it is just a geographical thing because in California, you just don't have videos of plea hearings very much. But let me see if there are any more questions here. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I want to do a live on TikTok too. I've got a huge following on there. It's cool. Everybody's loving the videos that I'm posting. I really appreciate the feedback and everything. So I want to do more. Can Brian still call Tik on the phone? Especially with him currently on the stand. No, they wouldn't want to set up anything like that, but he could call Christy Gladden and see what goes on with that. But yeah, I think tomorrow with them not being in session, I'm going to do a live on TikTok. It's just, I've never actually gone live on there. So with YouTube, you can just, go on your laptop like this, but TikTok, I'm going to do it on my phone. So I got to go get one of those phone stands for my iPhone 15. But, yeah, even his lawyer didn't understand what he was agreeing to. So, yeah, I mean, I should look at this video. I remember somebody said that earlier, and I was kind of like, But that's the thing. Don't assume that anything the prosecutors want to do, like, actually makes sense. But maybe the defense should be like, yeah, play this video. But one thing Max Shard brought up, which is Shannon Stilwell's lawyer, was bolstering. And what he means by, like, the whole scenario of the judge who's presiding over the trial, the jury would be watching a video of the judge in that courtroom being like, yes, you plead guilty. It like just gives more weight, like unnecessary weight than is needed kind of thing. So, yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate me. Thank you, Charisse. Like one thing I'm doing, I got some emails. I gotta get on my MTR merchandise, the Meghann the Reporter merchandise. I actually blocked somebody on Twitter today, and I felt a little bit bad for it because it's not even anyone connected to like the Lane stuff or anything. She goes way back to like the Michael Avenatti stuff, and I think she might have some mental health disorders. But she responded to some tweet that I did like weeks ago about my merchandise, and she just said simply, "It's ugly and way too busy." And I was like, "Oh no, no, block you right there." Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for tuning in. Wow, you guys are on it. I didn't even know about this. I'll have to look at it now. Because admittedly, before I started doing the clips, like I was watching the trial, but just a lot of the witnesses they've had. I mean, before Tik testified, some of the witnesses were just so, I don't even want to listen to this kind of thing. But the date being changed on paperwork when Steele crossed the Duluth or Dorville police officer, I'll have to go back and watch that. And that, like I said, I think it's a little late. Like it's putting old clips on YouTube isn't really the right medium, but I definitely think TikTok has an appetite for old clips. So if I can find something like that, I could clip it out for TikTok, but I'll have to check that out. But thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. I'll definitely stream on Monday. I guess they're back on Monday allegedly. So we'll see. I'll have to check with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporters about Friday, because last I heard the media hearing was Friday, but maybe they moved that. Because and you know what, that would be a good sign, because if the judge did move that hearing on Friday, there really could just be something going on in his life, like personally, like he has to go to Minnesota or some shit at the last minute. Like you just never really know. But anyway, thank you guys so much. Check out my TikTok if you can. I'm going to go live on there tomorrow.